Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's class. I hope we've been having a great weekend. As usual, when you come in, remember to mute your mics and write your name in the chat box, write your party. And going forward, the chairman of each party, you'll be responsible for attendance of the people in your party. So the onus lies on you to get your team members, your group members to always be in class. This will form part of your score for the best party at the end of the cohort. All right, so I will still announce this at the end of the class for party chairmen that are not online at the moment. Yeah, but you're all welcome to class. It promises to be a very interesting one. Our facilitator is already in class, but we'll give a few minutes for others to just join in, and then we'll start. Welcome again. Okay, welcome once again. I'll just read the profile of the facilitator. I will start. For group members that are here, please call on your other group members to join. Party chairman, call on your team members to join the class. Like I said, going forward, that will be the responsibility of the party chairman to ensure that their team members join the class. Okay. So today we're going to be having an interesting personality with us. And today's topic is the fourth estate in a democracy. And our facilitator is Kimberly Blessing Nwachukwu. And just a short profile, Kimberly Blessing Nwachukwu is a broadcaster, a journalist, a show host, a compare, and a podcaster. She's the anchor of Hard Facts on 95.1 Nigeria Info FM Abuja and the host of The Woman. She started off as a lunchtime show host and news anchor with Dark Communications, and her career spans over a decade. A decade. A graduate of University of Jos with several academic and professional qualifications and trainings from various reputable institutions. Kim has also received several trainings in the areas of election, migration, gender-sensitive reporting and advocacy, security, governance, and health. She is currently a Yaga Bounce Corruption Ambassador, a Youth Hub Africa Child Rights Advocacy Fellow, 2021 cohort of WSCIJ Female Reporters 5 Leadership Program Fellowship. With emojis and a warm welcome in the chat box, please can we welcome our facilitator for today, Miss Kimberly Blessing Nwachukwu. You're welcome, ma'am. It's great to have you after a while. Please, you have the floor, and I'll be sharing your slides shortly. Hello, are you with us, ma'am? Hello, ma'am. I think you need to enable your audio. We can't hear you. Okay, I think she's having a bit of network challenge, so let's just be patient a bit. Okay, but while we wait for her for her network to be okay, how has the assignment been? I hope we're getting ready to submit. Don't forget the deadline is 7 p.m. this evening. So does anyone have a comment? Do you have a question about the assignment so far? Or do you want to say anything before our facilitator comes on? Please just indicate with a show of hands. I think she's still having issues. Okay, I think we have her now. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear us? Are you with us? Can you confirm that you can hear us? We can't hear you. Hello, ma'am. Okay, I've asked you to unmute. Can you try it again? Hello, ma'am. I can see you're unmuted, but you're still not audible. We can't hear you yet. Do you want to try joining in afresh? Okay, okay. I just saw your other. Okay. Yeah, I think you can unmute now, ma'am.
Yeah, from this one, I'm trying to get, this is my phone.
Okay.
I'm trying to see if I can have the system back on. But if we can achieve that, if you can just please, apologies to the entire house. I'm so sorry. I'm having a challenge from this end, but just give me like a minute or two. Let me try and refresh it back on the system. I'll keep this one on. If that one doesn't connect, then we can go on with this. My apologies.
All right, that's fine. No problem.
All right, thank you. All right, I would, hello. Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, great.
Yes, madam, we can hear you. You can go ahead, please.
We can hear you now, ma'am.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so it's going to come from two sources. I have the laptop and all of that. The challenge is still there with the audio, but then the audio is coming from my phone. So if at any point there's a hallback or echo or sound that you're not familiar with or is interrupting, please let me know. I'm not in like full control of everything from this end. And is that okay? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, it's okay.
All right then. So please help me with the slide from that end, seeing that I'm having a little challenge here so that we'll get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kimberly Wanchuku. I'm a broadcast journalist with Nigeria Info FM. And Nigeria Info FM, for those who don't know, is a talk station. We talk politics, governance, national issues, current affairs, human angle stories. It's just a platform for people to have vibrant and rich conversation about things happening in the country and around the world, actually. So I'm really honored to be here and to be looking at this all-important conversation as to where the media sits in the grand scheme of things as the fourth estate of the realm. I know I've taken a few of the classes before, and I look forward to having an engaging conversation with you. So is the slide on from your end? Hello?
It's not up
Okay.
yet.
Okay, it's not up. So Wumi is the person controlling it from that end, right? Why you're on it? Well, we're looking at the media as the fourth estate of the realm. And I know that a number of people have asked was what it actually means for the media to be a fourth estate of the realm. And it date back to, years back, where trying to look at the critical role that the media plays, even though the NUJ chairman, my mind always goes back to what the NUJ chairman always said anytime you bring it up, that the media is the fourth estate of the realm. He will tell you the media does not have any realm. They just place us there, but there's no realm specifically, because people who have realms, like the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, we know that they have statutory allocation, but the media does not get that. But the media does have its own very vibrant role it plays. And to get a vibrant media, in any democracy, if the media is vibrant, it tells you where the democracy is at that point in time. However, if you find any country where the media is suppressed, then it tells you that there is a problem, because suppressing the media is suppressing information, and perhaps free speech is not something that's they entertain in those countries. And that's why you find countries with dictatorship, the first thing they suppress is the media. Because once you get the media out of the way, information cannot get out to the people. Platform for expressions are muzzled. And the media also, as we see it now, comprises the conventional media and what we have, the modern media, which is the social media, the digital space, is also one that tells you how a nation is fair in terms of free speech and expression. And so, yeah, looking at the fourth estate in the media, let's get started to looking at where we are in the country, what the performance of the media is in Nigeria, that is. But first of all, I want to start with a bit of the context that I've shared in this slide. Next slide, please. I actually wish I could do all of this from, no, let's just keep going to where we get started, because this is like the outline of what was sent. Maybe I should have reworked this slide anyway. It's from the previous class. So let's go to what is democracy. Let's get to understand it first, because we're looking at the fourth estate. And in a democracy like ours, it will be important to define it properly and then contextualize what we're talking about, the Nigerian media there. Yeah, the fourth estate is the media. Media, broadcast, press, social media, in the different forms that we see it. And that's why I put up the picture there that shows the internet, radio, magazine, TV, newspapers, tells you that the media is very broad. When we talk about the media and the press, it's quite broad in the different forms in which people exchange information and interrogate quite a lot of things happening in any country, in any space. And the media isn't just set up for a country. Media is set up for every aspect of human life. So it means that telling a human story about your mental health is a role that the media plays also. Talking with the expert, interrogating people, and even looking at, say, perhaps, data as to the number of people who have this challenge or how they are having conversations around their media, their mental health. So I just wanted to put this one out there so that I would know that it's not, when we talk about media, we shouldn't think hardcore all the time, or the press, where it has to be, politics, national issues and all of that. The human stories, the human angle, it's also a critical part of it. As a matter of fact, they're even encouraging more solution journalism to saying, let's start telling stories of successes in health, in education, in infrastructure, in the different aspects. That way, it won't just be limited like some people think. Next slide, please. So now that we know what the media is, I would want to see from the chat box, to make it quite interactive, what you perceive as a democracy. And I am sure you know this one. The language might be different, but would all agree on what we perceive to be a democracy. And I would want perhaps one or two comments. I would read them quickly to see your definition of a democracy in the Nigerian context. We'll take it off from there. So I'm going to go to the chat box and see if anybody has dropped anything about democracy. Okay, it's just the greetings. I will give you some time and I will get back to it as to what a democracy is. So, power in democratic countries is divided, like we know. Okay, government for the people, by the people, for the people. I think even if you ask a 2-year-old, it comes out like that's the first thing you get to know about the democracy is the government about the people, right? That the people decide, oh, these are the representatives. I mean, if you go back to, no, Olatokunbo, your definition is excellent. I'm not making fun of you, but I'm saying, yeah, this is the most basic we can get with democracy, and it hits it spot on. But if you go back to ancient Greece, where everyone, elders, men, women, young and old, used to come out to like what we have the village square back in the pre-colonial time, and make decisions about country, about their nation, about their state, about their welfare. So eventually it started evolving to a point where they say, okay, we need to delegate certain people to do certain things for us. So it evolves as much as it's the people now decide, all right, you, we're delegating you to be sort of our representative, to speak for us on our behalf, make legislation, make laws, make provisions, and the like of it. So it's been a long time coming, and I want to believe that with every generation, things evolve and get better with how people interact, within their countries and with their government. All right, see here that democracy is allowing people to participate actively in the policy and practice of government of a particular state. You're very correct. It's a definition that you can go on and be right on so many levels there. Now let's look at power. In most democratic countries is divided between, like we know in Nigeria, we have the legislature, you have the executive, you have the judiciary, and the fourth estate, which is the media, where the conversation is coming from, symbolizes another segment of the democratic structure of any country. Now, the fourth estate is seen as the established news media, which contain trained group of professional broadcasters, and I want to believe that we have quite a number of them in Nigeria who are trained and professional. As a matter of fact, the Broadcasting Organization of Nigeria is looking at regulating the broadcast arm to be sure that we have the right crop of people coming in. The Press Council is also looking at ensuring that we have trained journalists coming when it comes to the print media also. The power of the press comes from its ability to withhold or give out information. In other words, the role of giving accurate information to the citizen is one of the major roles of the media. And the press can be used to shape society while impacting news of notes, commentary, and the likes. Okay, yeah, now this is better. I can read from here. So yes, the role, like I mentioned earlier on, to shape society while impacting news of note. Either you're breaking them, you're running commentary on them, you're giving people platform to process the information they're getting and giving you feedback also. And if you notice the media lately, we're getting more vibrant to a point where you're getting feedback and interaction. Even if it's a TV program where it's a live program, but you can't that minute contribute, you can give feedback, which they would use. I know quite a number of TV programs that do that. With print, you have room for editorial, for critiques, And thanks to the social media, where people can actually put out thoughts that the conventional media will pick up from and perhaps respond to or give update on or interrogate. We've seen cases where people will do their sort of investigation, and then you find the conventional media doing something a bit more thorough to get all the angles, to get all the perspective, and to share with you. So that's what the role of the media is. Let's move on to the next slide to see how it connects as a fourth estate of the realm and in the democracy that is ours, and some of the roles of the media. Please, the minute you stop hearing me, let me know. I've already defined democracy, and I think you guys did a great job of defining democracy also. It's a political system in which the people of a country rule through any form of government that they choose. In Nigeria, we have a democracy that is, hinged on a federal system. And that's why you have the central government, and then you have the federating unit, you have state, they have their autonomy. And because of the system that we run, the federating unit, I know quite a number of people say, oh, true federalism and all. If we have true federalism, state should not be coming cap in hand to the center for money. But like I said, things will continue to improve. We'll continue to make the required legislation to see how we can get the sort of democratic structure that is well suited to Nigeria. So you choose what you want. We chose to work with a federal system, even though we're colonized by the British and they have a monarchy. But Nigeria is too diverse, too different from the UK to have their kind of structure on. So we decided to go with a proper democracy, riding on a federal system in which different states have their level of autonomy based on what's provided in a concurrent list. The executive is for the center, concurrent is for where we share with the federal and the state, and the residual one eventually. So that's the structure that we run. Now the political, sorry, I would have to be reading between here because the screen is just too narrow for me to get what's written on it. So the political structure of any society is, moving towards democracy, a system of government that supports the governance of the people, by the people, for the people, like Olatokunbo stated there. And democracy would, however, only mean a mirage until the freedom of the press is guaranteed, since the media or the press remains one of the very important channels through which provisions are made for freedom of expression, access to information, and which are seen as fundamental human rights. Right to some of those things, your free speech and all of that, your access to information is there to interrogate certain things. So if that is not reflecting in your democracy, it means that perhaps what you have is not a democracy, is a dictatorship or something else. Let's move on to the next slide. And while we're getting to the next slide, I also want to see comment on what your thought is about our democracy. Do you think that we practice democracy in the real sense of it, beyond the yes and no answer? Looking at it from the context also of the liberality of the media and free speech in the country, I would love to get from one or two people at least what their thought is on democracy in Nigeria. And also to get to hear your thoughts on free speech and the freedom of the press in Nigeria. If you think and believe that the media does have as much liberty as it's required in a democracy to function, and that the people are also there to express themselves freely. Let's see. Amarachi saying Nigeria has not gotten to the level of democracy as defined. Okay, that's so you are saying that as defined, all right? So we have not gotten there. There sounds like there's hope in what you have written that eventually we will. It will actually take effort of the people. Now, from what I'm seeing in Nigeria, we're not practicing a good democracy. What is good democracy? What Salih Mohammed, okay, says, we're still growing. Olatokunbo says democracy in Nigeria is still growing, finding right footing. The media is coming of age too. No full free speech yet. Imagine what the wife of the president did recently. It's a good one that you brought that one up, because hopefully I don't forget, we'll get there. We'll look at where the line is drawn to say your right ends where someone else's starts. So you also need to contain how much of, takes me back to, I think it's Idi Amin who says that you're entitled to free speech, but freedom after speech, it's where he cannot guarantee you at the end of the day. Now, freedom of the press is subject to certain restrictions, such as defamation law, a lack of protection for whistleblowers, barrier to information, access and constraint caused by, public government hostility towards the media. Is there hostility towards the media? To a certain degree, yes. I mean, the media has come to a whole lot. We've had, you've all heard the story of Dele Giwa till today. They're asking who killed him. We do not have that update. There's been media practitioner, journalists who have been killed in the line of duty in Nigeria, in just trying to do their job, in trying to report issues happening in government and in the country. And I tell you that one of the most difficult places to report is when you want clarity around financing, corruption-related issues. And that's why you find some people who are bold to write certain things about certain individuals. They don't reside in Nigeria, because if they are in Nigeria, perhaps they'll be picked up. We've had journalists who were invited and held back because of access to certain information that they had and that they published eventually. So yes, when it comes to freedom of the press, we are not there yet. Maybe not half as bad as some other countries you find in some other parts of the world, but Nigeria is not liberalized to a point where the press enjoys that level of freedom. That's why arrests are still being made. And that's why you find, I think in the last administration, even with this one, where they confiscated papers, they didn't want it to go into circulation because of what was printed there. Media houses have been shut down because they put out certain information and even fined because of certain information. Now, I'm not saying, like, the broadcast media where I operate, it does have regulator. So if you play outside the rules provided and the regulations, there's a tendency for a fine. But, people will also still argue that it's so constricting that it doesn't give you that room to really want to interrogate and take on certain things. But eventually we'll get there. In Nigeria, the freedom of expression is protected by Section 39, subsection 1 of the Federal Republic of Nigeria Constitution. And despite this constitutional protection, the Nigerian media was controlled by the government through much of history and even to date. So it's not as liberal as you would want it to be. Next slide, please. So where I put the next slide, let me look at some of the comments sent in. We do not practice democracy in Nigeria. The press is not totally free. Even the checks and balances of the three arms is not functional. Okay, all right then. Democracy, free speech, etc. are just lip service in Nigeria. Okay, I don't think Kwado Benedicta was the one who sent, we do not practice democracy in full. And I think, was it Wilfred? Okay. I'm sure I've seen all your comments, so forgive me. There's so much going on. Let's go to the next slide. Free press is one of the pillars of democracy. I mentioned that. The minute you do not have a free press, you do not have a democracy in the real sense of it. And that's why I asked the question as to if you thought we were free enough to say, and I think that's where, is it Aminu Mohammed was saying that we do not have a good democracy in the sense that all of the pillars that make for a democracy in the sense, and from the places where we borrowed it from, is not reflected yet in Nigeria. And others will argue that, yes, the country is still pretty much growing. Let's go to the next slide. I've had some argument to say that the reason why we're here is because our democracy is still growing. I mean, we're looking at a country that gained independence since, 1960? And we know the power of the press and the media, even before our democracy. As a matter of fact, one of the strongest weapons that was used to get where we are today, independence and to stand on our feet is the press. Going back in time to all of the founding father, one important tool to use was the press. And that's why you have the Lagos Daily, putting out opinion, a lot of interrogating the position of the colonizers. The colonial master was put up with these articles that were circulated, and the educated Nigerians at that point who had formal education could interrogate quite a number of things put out there. So even in our independence, the media played a critical role. And if you're looking at all the times that the military intercepted and hijacked our democracy, the media also played a critical role, even though the media suffered, because there were a lot of suppression at that point in time. If you read the history of Nigeria, when the military come, after they have collapsed the constitution and no longer working with it, the next target is free speech. Once they're able to muscle that, they regulate what happens from that point in time. And that's why some people will say the worst democracy is better than the best dictatorship you ever find. I know a lot of people want to argue that, but I promise you, you will be so shocked at how much of your liberty is reduced if you had a dictatorship or a military rule in the sense that we've had it in the past. So yes, to get us even back to, civilian rule, it took the role of an active media, an active press, and very bold journalists at that time to say, no, we can't keep quiet. We need to keep writing. We need to keep putting information, even though there have been series of clamp down and shut down. But that's one way to get, to shape people's minds and help with the narrative to saying we can do better than this military rule that we see. We can self-rule. We can come up with, our own representative if people just had that information. Now, the obligation of the media is entrenched in the 1999 Constitution, well spelled out. Section equally endows it with the duty not only to discharge its normal watchdog role in all aspects of governance and in guiding and advancing the frontier of people's liberty and freedom, but also the obligation to regard itself as policing institution over the fundamental objective and direct principle of state policy, as well as citizens' fundamental rights. So that policing role is where that fourth estate comes in, to saying we give you information, we help shape your opinion about things, we get your feedback, and we police. We act as that watchdog. I know a lot of people use it. The media is a watchdog. I get that daily because I do a daily radio show. It's called Hard Facts. And every now and again, people remind me, you people are in the media. You are the watchdog. Go and find out how they're spending our security money. Go and find out how much security vote was given. But there's very little you can get as to how much was given, because that's where corruption is affecting the job of the media. And the media also need to be able to surmount that hurdle, because a lot of things are opaque in Nigeria. Information that you readily get, even if you write your freedom of information requests, you don't get response. And the law stipulates how much time is required for an organization to give you feedback. But half the time you don't get feedback. And when you do get feedback, the feedback might be, okay, give us time to get this information together. And the law does not state how much time that is required. It tells you to go to court from that point in time. Very few people and very few media organizations want to go through the hassle of going to court. But I think, yes, we should challenge things a bit more to getting information. So when people say, oh, you're a watchdog, you should know, is to say more people need to get investigating. And I don't know how many of you are in the media, but investigative journalism is not a walk in the park. They've often compared Nigerian media to the foreign media and say, oh, they unravel so many things, they discover so many things. There's a lot of challenge that the media is dealing with in Nigeria that is a hindrance to getting that. But in spite of it, in spite of all of the challenge, you'll be surprised at how much the Nigerian media is able to put out, in spite of the very many challenges. Now, the fact that the Constitution imposes a duty on the media to monitor governance implies that it should undertake vigilance over the relationship between the people and the government. Now, I'll ask another quick question. Do you think the media is playing that role? That policing role, that watchdog? From your perspective and from your understanding, looking at the media in Nigeria, and perhaps with what you know, for those of you who have traveled or follow up on foreign press and reportage, how, in your opinion, would you say the Nigerian media is performing in its role as a port estate in policing institutions, individuals, and acting as that watchdog? Olatokunbo. Temenu says averagely. Are we doing okay on a scale of 1 to 10? We're 5. That's what you're saying, averagely, yeah? Okay, it says 5. Let's see, do we have another response? Okay, I am trying to get, I want to see averagely in Nigeria. Ifeoluwa Oyedeji. In Nigeria, you say no, like Amaka Ocheka says the 3 guys now, be nice. You really perceive it that the media is underperforming to this degree? No, I would want your truth. Is your truth you're sharing? Because the reason why we're having this is because you are interested in policy, in politics. And I never can tell the number of you who will get into active politics, who will get into appointive and elective position, who will become policymakers, decision makers. And you would also see from the perspective on how the nation and the people interact with the media and how much constraint is on the part of the media. So it'd be nice to get that feedback from you and what you perceive. They on the average say 7. Restriction might be the issue, says Favor. Nigerian media knows what to do, but isn't given the chance to do it, says Amarachi. And Amaka says too many are interested in brown envelope. It just feels like we cannot have a conversation about the media without brown envelope coming. Is it a myth? Is it a fact? And what is responsible for that brown envelope syndrome? We'll get to it in a bit. But let's look at, get to appreciate the role of the media in a democracy even a bit more. That the media supplies the political information that voters base their decisions on. They identify problems in our society and serve as a medium for deliberation. They also serve as a watchdog the society rely on for uncovering errors, wrongdoing by those who have power. The media is vital in generating a democratic culture that extends beyond the political system of any country and Nigeria, since we're in Nigeria, and becomes ingrained in the political consciousness over time. And the role of the media in a democracy is as crucial as that of the politician and should never be underestimated. But you know what? There are a lot of people who underestimate and who, because of the constraints, this payment and the funding of the media, that's why the NUJ chairman, FCT chairman, Mr. Emmanuel Obeche would say the media has no rem technically because it does not have allocation coming to it. So if you're looking at private media, is what they can raise. If you're looking at the government media, is what they get from the government and what they generate on their own. And because a lot of media houses are going through some challenges, that is where the brown envelope syndrome comes from. You'll be surprised at the number of media houses that can hardly pay at the end of the month. And those who hand you ID cards and say, go out there and earn your keep with this ID card. A lot of media owners are taking that responsibility to understand that you cannot have a vibrant media if you operate on this platform. And so that challenge is what even people within the media are calling out to saying it needs to end. You can't get the very best of hand if we continue to deal with this. And that's why someone like FFP can say, who's bankrolling you? Because it feels like, oh, somebody is paying you to do this. But I promise you guys that there are a lot of press men and women in this country who have not compromised standard or ethics in getting the job done. There are quite a number of them who stake their lives for certain things and their integrity at the end of the day. So yeah, as much as you want to think brown envelope and all of that, there are people who still get this job done. Now, looking at more challenge of the media, Dimka titles agrees. Thank you very much. We're looking at the issue of censorship. Censorship comes from the government, the regulators, telling you, okay, this, you can't express this thought, you can't put this one out, it's capable of inciting, or why did you allow, like Obadiah, who was on our station in Lagos, God rest his soul, and he said something about, oh, this insecurity has persisted for so long that the hand of certain governors are involved and that they are the ones sponsoring the insecurity. And it just felt like, oh, that was a very grave allegation that's been made on radio. We got a fine at that point in time. And the problem was, is it like he shouldn't be able to say this? Or that is former, he's high profile, might be privy to certain information given his person and all of that. They say, oh, you should have interrogated him. You should name those governors. Even the government of Nigeria will tell you they know the people sponsoring terrorism, but you don't get a name. Oh, we got so amount of money, come with name and shame, but you never get to see a name, because there's a whole lot to putting out a name out there that you need, without any shadow of doubt, proof to substantiate it in court. And if you don't have all of that, or you're for you. We've even had EFCC lose case in court because they would allege but cannot prove in court. And that's why we've seen a lot of people who you have grand media trial around their issues, corruption, but we never can really convict them because the hard evidence is not there. So even with the media, with naming and putting out certain things, you want to know that you have all of your facts together before you put it out there. And that's why lately some people would rather go to social media. It is still pretty much an unregulated space, and there's still wiggle room to get away with certain things. Well, except you are Aminu, and then the wife of the president gets you. And Aminu's own was not an information, let's get it clear. It was an opinion that the wife of the president was feeding fats on Talakawa's money. So his opinion got him into hot water. The media is not meant to put out those kind of opinion. The media is to interrogate and back it with facts. So just to let you know where we stand with that. We talked about the censorship. Media ownership and control also goes a long way to tell the kind of stories that is reported. I'm sure a lot of you are aware that private media are owned by a wide range of individuals. And I'm sure you have heard, oh, some media houses or print houses are owned by certain people who are still in the corridors of power. You have heard that, Abi? So it can also shape certain narrative around certain stories. You could want to tell a story about the state of development in Nigeria, or human capital, or infrastructure. And depends on the owner of that media organization, would depend to if the control is heavy. But the good thing, a lot of media houses, I can say confidently that ownership influence is still there, but not heavy as such. Because people now know, oh, there's a leaning far right or far left. You can almost tell to some people, like, let's say this media house, they support this government. If I say this one day, you get that, right? Sometimes you follow a program and you get that feeling. Some people tie it to ownership. It could just be the editorial policy and not the owner of the place. You understand? It could just be an editorial one that we're going to see it from this lens. Some people always want to look at the worst case scenario. Some will want to give that glimmer of hope to saying it's not all doom and gloom. It's not Uhuru yet. However, look at the things happening. And that's why, for example, when the Minister of Information comes out and read out the scorecard, some average Nigerian critics will say, Is this an alternative universe? This is not this Nigeria I'm living. How can he say this is happening? But if you interrogate what he said, there are facts to it that he can substantiate. However, it is just one aspect. And any government we want to amplify, even if it is the tiniest success, they will stay on that one tiny success. You can worry about the other things. They will tell you what they've done right. And that's why when we're looking at insecurity, the narrative of the government is, then, remember, we have dealt with Boko Haram. We have captured ground zero. Nigerians were saying, but insecurity is still going on. Banditry is rising in the Northwest. But why is the government still saying we have done well? Because, well, they promised they're going to deal with Boko Haram. And they actually managed to contain the activity of Boko Haram, chase them out of ground zero. So they are going to focus on that success and not be distracted by the fact that the threat is spreading beyond that. On one hand, it's narrow, because that's not the big picture. It's like 10 blind men and the elephant. So the role of the media comes in neutral liberal media comes in to give people big pictures with the little details that is required to say we can report the success of the government in this area and what they've done with Boko Haram. And we're not afraid to tell the government and the people that there's threat in the Northeast, that there's rising unrest in the Southeast with the secessionist group, or that highways are dangerous to travel, even though we have had some considerable success in the northeastern part of the country. So that's where the media comes in. So that it's not a propaganda, it's a full story and a clear picture of where the country is. Then there's also the secrecy, denying press access to information. I don't even need to build on this one. I am sure at this point you already know that information is not the easiest to get out of government offices and government individuals. Invite even a government official. You will write long letter as to why they should come, then authorize, and they will micromanage the information put out there to a certain extent. I also did mention the Freedom of Information request that you make and how half the time you never get the information you want. I remember groups like Connected Development when we worked in partnership with them, and then they were trying to follow COVID money. And they were writing requests to state governors to say, okay, how much did you receive and how did you spend it? A good number of the governors did not have those information to share. They will just tell you, this is what we did. But how did you spend this money? Because it's COVID money we're tracing. You can't give that detail. School feeding that happened during the lockdown, name of palliative, there's a round figure broken down per region and all of that. You know, the bit of that information to assuage the fear of people that, oh, monies were embezzled during that. Those critical information, it's not easy to get them. It's not. And that's why today the narrative is, oh, the humanitarian ministry ate money because you don't have all of the information available. I'm not saying she did, but I'm saying if you don't have information, the reason why Nigeria still reflects badly when it comes to corruption perception is because of lack of transparency and accountability. And if you look, all the recommendations that have been put out over the years, they always say there should be a bit more accountability and transparency. They make people can interrogate and see where you stand in real terms. They will better appreciate it. But the perception will not change that Nigeria is a corrupt country as long as government continues to hoard information, particularly when it comes to financing, spending, and otherwise. So then there's the challenge of funding. I mentioned it for the media as the fourth estate of the realm. Poor remuneration. A good number of journalists are not paid well. A good number of media organizations are struggling to stay afloat. There is lack of training also and expertise, the technical skill that is required. It also does affect that. And I did mention what move is being made to see how even the space itself would be, I don't want to use the word regulated, but we need to see the character of these individuals coming into the space. Because if you're looking at the fourth estate, you need people, as much as you're demanding integrity from the president, the governors, the legislatures, you also need that level of integrity from the media and from the media practitioners and from the journalists out there. Because if they are compromised, whatever information you get is compromised. Let's go to the next slide. We're getting there. Let me see. Okay. What is when the media owners? Okay, let me see. What is the position of journalists in achieving free press with what happened to Chief Dele Giwa? Favor Broderick is asking. Let me see. And democracy is the government of the people. Okay, I read all of that. Let's go further down to see what comment you've put in after that. Nigeria is, oh dear, okay. I don't think I have full control. Everything is interesting today. Nigerian media knows what to do. I read that before. Getting one's facts together isn't just the thing. Who is involved matters. How do we handle brown envelope? And must it be used to do investigative journalism? Ola Tokumbo. Okay, that's the question you're asking. How do you brown envelope has nothing to do with investigative journalism. There is no rule book that contains brown envelope for journalists. Brown envelope is, what do you mean by brown envelope? I need to understand we're all in the same page. Please, one or two people, just tell me what you mean by brown envelope. Don't be afraid, say it to your full chest. What is brown envelope? When you bribe, okay, Amarachi, I see. So are you now, Amarachi, if you agree that brown envelope is outright bribe, then you can't use it in the same breath with investigative journalism, because it is no longer investigative journalism if a bribe has been paid. Brown envelope is fund for appreciation, transport, and good work. If you go for a press conference and they give you transport to go back, is that bribe? Technically. However, if you are investigating a story and then you go to the house of the person and say, oh, okay, how can we as individuals verify the news coming from the media, seeing that they're the only source of information for us? You need to trust the media. You need to have that faith. That's how much. So going back to the brown envelope, if, for example, you go for a press conference or you're invited to come for a press meeting, and then they decide to give a stipend to cover for lunch and transport, that is not bribe, is it? If you're investigating a story or you're writing a report independently, and then you go to the person and say, we're following up a report here, and then they give you money, that is influencing you already. That is bribery, or that is giving you money to say, please, don't give all the information or don't put me in your story. Then that is bribe. But I get it that a lot of time when people go, I see NGOs, they invite media, and so the media always like brown envelope. You invite them to come and cover your report or an event that is commercial. It might not be the most popular practice outside Africa or Nigeria. I've been to several African countries and I know they do that also. But it's not a practice in Europe or in America that journalists will come and cover something. How many journalists, even in Europe, go for press conferences and expect to be compensated? Their media houses are vibrant, they are rich. They send you and the driver, you go and cover those things and you come back. Or if you're a freelance journalist, you do it on your own. And then the press conferences are such that people who go for, perhaps you're going to the White House, there are select journalists whose job, just like in Nigeria, select journalists go to the National Assembly to cover certain stories. So whatever is handed to them might be just part of the package. But if you're doing investigative reports and money changes hand, then you're very correct to say it's a bribe and a manipulation of whatever report comes out. Yes, anyone who gives you money wants a favorable story. Okay, Amarachi has put full stop there. Doesn't want to know what happened. Well, I quite agree with you. The minute you say, thank you for coming, take envelope and your transport money and lunch, it means technically be nice. Now, but do you think people will call press conference? Okay, I agree with you, Amarachi. But here's something with, let's say, for example, if the government, the Minister of Information, calls for a press conference, and then you have journalists there, they write, they hear what he has said. How you write the story will now determine if that appreciation or that brown envelope, aka that you perceive as bribe, was given to this individual, influences the outcome of the story. Because, we even got to a point where journalists are even discouraged from working with press statement word for word. Put out press statement and you do copy and paste. Sometimes you need to be, okay, this is the position of the government, be able to interrogate it to say, however, these are the facts of it. Sometimes you don't see that done, maybe because money has influenced it, or it's just unprofessional, untrained journalist, or just being lazy and taking the easy way out half the time. But people should be able to interrogate. If the minister says, we have done well in the area of road construction, Second Niger Bridge is ready, and he calls for a press briefing, you have briefed. It's left for me to know the true state of things and ensure that people do not just hear only the voice of the minister in that story, that they get the voice of reality from the facts on ground also. So yeah, half the time is favorable. And that's why you get to hear some media houses. They will tell them, don't let that journalist come here again because I don't understand what he wrote. But we've had quite a number of journalists who are barred from accessing certain government press conferences and meetings and gatherings because they interrogate afterwards, and they don't like that. Okay. But yeah, the payment is a challenge, and if we don't fix that, we'll continue to have that challenge, and that's the fact. If the media act as a catalyst for democracy and development, helping to make, active participation possible. If the media is honest and committed in its job, democracy is bound to function more efficiently, and the loopholes present in any democratic system can be certainly plugged and addressed properly. Everyone suddenly got that. All right then. So yeah, looking at the role as the media, the fourth estate of the realm, the challenges, we've appreciated it. The expectation of the media, we've stated it. The constraints, okay, we've talked about it. And okay, is press conference free? Can there be other source? Okay, that went by too fast for me. And let's see if I can get it back up. I think I like that question that I saw. Let me see if I can get it back. So one question about conferences, press conferences. The most important sector in Nigeria are unpaid. Is press conference free? Can there be other sources of income for journalists, even media coverage, book service, and product launches? Okay, Olatukumbo, all right. Press conferences, culture plays a role sometimes in what we do. I've been to several West African countries, East African countries, one South African country, enough to know that we have something in common with some of these conferences, particularly select journalists who that is their beat and they know them. There's usually a package for telling stories from government perspective. But because that's still a conflict of interest, I must admit, because for us to get to interrogate things properly, money compromises it. In all honesty, because you're not going to tell the story as much as you want or interrogate quite a number of things if somebody has given you appreciation. It would be ungrateful for you to be appreciated and you not be saying, these people are stealing us blind, or you're not giving us the fact of the matter. So I think funding for the media is just critical. The better media a press person is paid, a journalist is paid, the better for all of us. Okay, let's get to you now asking your questions. I'm sure there are other areas, questions you want to ask. Please bring them on. The most important sector in Nigeria underpaid, looking at education and the media. How can career journalists or media firms generate income without compromising? Well, they generate through their paid commercials, paid adverts, paid articles. You could actually pay for certain commentary to run. People will separate them from hard news. So there are several ways, but the thing is, most people don't even appreciate it. Even on my radio show, I get people like, let's come and talk about it. You say, no, that's how we make money. They say, but you're supposed to make your money from jingles alone. Sometimes you don't have the strength to explain too much. People have been invited to media houses for a one-on-one talk. Do they pay for such session? Depends on what you want to talk about. If you want to talk about your event, you pay. If you want to have a conversation about issues, you don't pay. Okay, so Kingsley Akange's hand is up. Apparently, Kingsley has a question. So please, let's hear from Kingsley. You can unmute, Kingsley.
Yes. Kingsley, you can go ahead.
Yes, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Yes. You in the course of your discussion answering the question, you mentioned something about the media taking whatever comes from the government. And I see that most of the times, the state correspondent for most of these media houses are compromised. So my question is, what can the ordinary citizen do? Because when you know that what the government are saying is a blatant lie, because in my state, for instance, the government says the state is an agrarian state, and the government says they are doing agricultural revolution, and the agency that is responsible for agriculture is comatose. There's not been funded for the last 10 years. There are no staff, and these media guys still take what the government gives them, hook, line, and sinker. So what can the ordinary person do to change the narrative or to put the right story out there?
All right. Thank you very much for that. Let me respond to that quickly. And I love the fact that you mentioned your state, clear example, where you say, oh, they're saying there's a revolution going on. The organization is comatose. You're not seeing anything to show for the big English revolution. You know, we like to use big grammar. Ultra-modern building. Then you now find out it's one-story building, shabbily built. Ultra-modern rail system. You now find out that it's not even half as cool as the bullet train we have in some Asian countries. We like to use that revolution, ultra-modern, and the likes of it. Now, that's where there's that compromise. It's either the journalist is not properly trained, not the media organization is not properly funded, or they get retainership from the government enough to tell only the government stories. And I care to find out, is it a private media organization? Because government media, people are always too hard on government media, like, you know, the non-related FRCNs and the NTAs, and say, oh, they only tell you. But that's what they are set up. They're actually set up to give you what the government is doing. It's not as if they don't give you all-round information, but the emphasis might just be, oh, there's an agricultural revolution. Now, people like you, like you're asking now, what should people do? What should the citizen do? Is to be able to call it, and that's why I'm grateful that we still have a very vibrant social media space where people are still, you know, putting out thought and say, I read this article by this newspaper house and this reporter agreeing with the government that indeed there's an agricultural revolution. However, I live in this state, I operate here, and you know, you state out your own facts, your own report as an active citizen. You know, we talk about in a democracy, you have office of the citizen where you should be active enough to call out whatever report is put out there, to even write editorials. Sometimes people write, you know, some of these pieces to media houses and they might not publish it, but you have that power in putting out, even from your Facebook page, you can call out certain things. I've known people who have on their own Facebook page called out a reporter in news media for how they told the story, and they were forced to follow up and build on that story. I have seen quite a number of it. And like you say, it happens sometimes with, you know, state correspondents who have to literally just give you what the government wants you to hear without following up and investigating to saying, oh, all right, is this the fact of the matter? That is where perhaps we're dropping the ball. Amarachi, let's hear your take.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this. It's really quite interesting and insightful. I want to ask you, you mentioned, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you, Amarachi. Go
Okay,
ahead.
all right. So you mentioned media allocation. Yeah, you mentioned it several times. I want to know, please, who is supposed to give this allocation? I'm talking about Nigerian media now. Are we talking about the government? Because it's still the same government who actually owns some media houses and still get to meddle with their affairs and color several things that we get to hear. In fact, I don't know how many percent of Nigerians actually listen or take the news from NTA or RSTV, from where I am very credible. That's one. That's about the allocation. Is it the government who is supposed to give this allocation?
Amarachi, I brought that one up. I mentioned it twice because it's something that the NUJ chairman, Nigerian Union of Journalists chairman, FCT chapter, Emmanuel Ogoche, he always says that whenever you call and say, oh, the media is the fourth estate of the realm, he will giggle and say the first estate of the realm, the legislature, there is allocation. The executive gets allocation. The judiciary gets allocation. But the media does not get an allocation, so it does not have a realm. So he says it on a lighter note.
Okay.
So it's not meant to say the government must give the media money. No.
Okay.
It just says what it is.
Okay. Secondly, I want to know how much is too much when it comes to investigative journalism, because I see there's this I follow David Hunde on Twitter, and he gets to do, I love his investigations and all that, beautiful. And then someone else comes up, maybe who's not so known, and does something, and everybody or the people involved is already on the person's neck. So how much is actually too much? You talked about getting facts, but this is not, I don't see it as just the facts. I see that as who is involved. So how much exactly is too much when it gets who is
involved in what sense?
The person. Okay, for instance, what's this young man who the president's wife has this issue with?
Aminu,
okay, so, yeah, exactly, Aminu. So Aminu says something and about the president's wife, and he's almost in fact, he's in for it already. But then some person says something like David Hundin, he says a whole lot of things. I follow him a whole lot, and sometimes it seems as though he's untouchable. So exactly how far do we go with this investigative journalism that we don't get as our necks in?
Yeah. One, Aminu did not do investigative journalism. Yes. Aminu is the student who went on Twitter and looked at a picture of the wife of the president looking plump and put out his thoughts. He started thinking out loud on social media and shared his opinion of that picture, that she is fat because she's feeding off of Talakawa's money. There's no investigative anything. He cannot prove that the wife of the president had access to poor people's money. Where is poor people's money? I'm sure he's trying to say the public, our collective national wealth. But does the wife of the president have an office? Is she signatory to any account? Does she have direct access? The only access she has is wife of the president. No allocation goes to her, technically, for anything. So the only money she gets perhaps comes from people who want to appreciate her, because you'll be surprised that even to have access to certain individuals, money parts hand. There's a lot going on, guys. So maybe people who send her money, groups and bodies and unions who work in partnership with her for whatever project she has and whatever she gets as the wife of the president. So Aminu's own was an opinion which he cannot substantiate beyond what he thinks it is. David Unduyi, on the other hand, first of all, it's not in Nigeria, because if it was in Nigeria, I'm sure he would have slept 2 nights or 3 nights in Kuje top bunk. He would have gotten into trouble. But the good thing is he's not here. And I tell you that there are a lot of freelance journalists who are doing investigative journalism, very thorough, interrogating, not afraid, no hold bar. A good number of them are not even Nigeria. They operate from outside the country. You see them, they're present every day. You think they're here, but they don't live here. Because if they do, David Unduyi cannot be in Nigeria and be telling you Bobo Chicago and be telling you did not go to school and all of that. He would not do that. That is where we're talking about liberty and freedom. And then secondly, David Hundu is different from Aminu is the fact that he can substantiate his claim with some evidence. He did some background check. He wrote to the school. He brought out old document, court document to say, guys, see what I'm talking about. So with his own, the government is forced to respond. In the sense of the government, I mean, Festus Keyamo, who speaks, campaign spokesperson and the likes to say, oh, his old document, oh, it's not true. Because he could substantiate it with something. Investigative journalism does not mean you come up with your opinion and say, I think this government, they are corrupt. How? Show proof. Do some background work and tie it together. So Aminu was not doing investigative journalism. It was not about to, if a thoroughbred journalist puts a thought like Aminu, you still get into trouble. So it's not about who, it's about what you're saying and what facts do you have to back what you have said. Because even with journalism, you have to tie it up with something tangible. EFCC, I'm telling you, lose cases in court more than they win because they cannot back a good number of the things they believe in with solid evidence. So that's where the line is drawn. It's not about who per se, it's the what you have to prove it. Okay, do you have any other questions, any other comment? To express yourself, you need to leave the country. Well, you can express yourself, but we've seen people who, even in expressing themselves, have gotten into trouble. That's why we know that we're not where we should be just yet. And that's why when the government wanted to regulate social media, you saw the outcry. Because as much as I personally believe that the social media needs some sort of regulation, because some people deliberately put fake news and misinformation to stir up trouble, I'm also afraid to lend my voice to the call for that regulation, because give an inch, they'll take a yard and deny you that liberty to express yourself. So that's where that conflict comes in. You understand? To saying, I don't trust you enough to allow you regulate in the sense that you want to this space, because you might take too much away from it. But does the media, social media, even need some sort of watchdog over it? Yes. Because people, if you see what they put out there, blatant lies sometimes, you'll be shocked. Oh, Dr. Mike DK, please go ahead. Dr. Mike, you have the mic. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm sorry, what I want to say, probably what I want to ask or say, probably somebody may have said it, because I've been battling with network issues. First of all, you said when I listened to you, and I'm glad, and I looked and I listened very well, and I have questions which were raised, and you raised a certain debatable question. When you raised it, I laughed actually, which was the democracy or media, was it very better in the military days or better democracy, or do we want that? The question is this, and from a comment to a question, are we really practicing democracy like are we practicing civil rule? And either of the two. The question is, some of us who experienced some years of military rule, can we say some of the things that happened during some of the things the government did to the media then, did it not happen in the days of this time around of civil rule? If it happened, are we really practicing the democracy? Is that democracy? That's the question. The question is, those things that happen where the governments have somehow gagged up or trying to shut down the media, is that not happening now? If it's happened now, is that democracy? That's one. Then two, the issue of the media. The question is, are they really contributing to the survival of this democracy? That is one question I would like to ask. But if I'm to now comment to that question, is the media not causing more harm than good to this our democracy? Though it's no more nonsense. They can't say the democracy is not nonsense again, because we're above 20 years or thereabout. that is it up now? Are we going to say? So my question, two questions now: is democracy, is the media projecting or promoting or enhancing democratic, helping with democracy, or is the media not a threat to democracy based on what is happening now? Where even the media, even the paid media, are coming up with even the in these days of regulatory issues, some of the government-owned or political godfather-owned media are coming up with stories that are not verified, they're not true, and nobody is shutting them down. And nobody is shutting them down because of the power that be. And now the next question you asked is, what do you mean by brown envelope? When you ask that question, I laugh. Brown envelope? The question, I laughed. The definition of brown envelope is true. We have to define it. It might be an area, it might be something else. But the question is brown envelope not killing investigative journalism? Where some people did some researches, and after the end of the day went to a media house to sell it. I'm talking about a case of some of us who have served in the civil service. We did some investigation and we pulled and said, oh, this case, we have it. And it's or a rape on against this person, and it's from this person. By the time getting and did a lot of investigation, I found that it's true. Only for it to get to the head got a call from somebody, and said, no, it must not fly. We moved to the next media, the same thing happened. Moved to the next media, the same thing happened. At the end of the day, still something silence. Now, this is where I would like you to respond. So these two questions: is democracy or is the media helping the democracy? One, two, even if the media is not a threat to democracy, based on what is happening on issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And if we are not careful, don't we think if the media is even the one that is causing ethnic dichotomy and value dichotomy in Nigeria? These are my three questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. Starting with media and a threat. Media and democracy, free press and democracy should go hand in glove, because that's one strong pillar of any true democracy and any liberal, state, to saying that you have a very vibrant media. The minute it's not there. Now, the question as to if it's helping democracy, right? Am I getting it right? Yes, it should. That's the role of the media. It should enrich democracy. It should be able to get information out, give people platform for that expression. And we've defined that in the start. Threat, I think I understand where you're coming from as to what the media can do. And I know a lot of people will take you back to the Rwandan genocide and how the media played a role. One, media. Two, in which people who should know better would refer to a different group as cockroaches. That was so inciting enough to bring about the bloodletting in which hundreds of people and thousands of people died in Rwanda. So yes, we can see a classic example of where the media was used wrongly and it cost the lives of people and the stability of the nation. But in Nigeria, we can't use a blanket expression for the antics of a few individuals or select. We've seen the media being instrumental to our liberty from the colonizers. I'm sure, Dr. Mike, you are well read. You would know the significant role the media played. Even down to the struggle with the military rule, you would know the significant role that the media played. It cost some people their lives. They were incarcerated just to ensure that people do not get too comfortable with the military rule. Now, coming to the democracy and the fact that the media itself is a product of the system. If the media quality is dropping, there's something generally dropping about the entire country. And so when people interrogate the police and say, oh, this one, police is also a victim of the system. So we're having so many systemic problems that is affecting every sector, every industry, and every space that needs to be corrected. I don't think the media is a threat. to the democracy of this country. I feel like, yes, there are issues that need to be resolved. And you know, the story about the investigation and the fact that you have put out there, I can understand if people are coming with their own independent finding. First of all, is it a media that even has the capacity to follow up? Because they can't take your word hook, line, and sinker and say, okay, they would need to be certain without any shadow of doubt that the information you have given them is the reality of it and not distorted. So the funding to even follow up on it might also be a challenge where they will say, okay, thank you very much, next. There can actually be some when it will get to the editor, and the editor will receive a phone call and say, you cannot run that story. There are plenty of those kind of reports. I cannot deny it. You cannot run the story. And that's why when I was looking at the challenges, we talked about ownership. We talked about censorship. These are facts that is like a legitimate constraint on the performance of the Nigerian media. And the fact that a lot of media houses, you'll be surprised at those who depend on government sort of incentive and retainership, which will limit the quality of what they put out at the end of the day. Most private organizations do not do that, but there are some expanding in different places where they get some sort of retainership. They will tell the story, but I see the challenge. I don't really know the nature of the story that you put up, but I know that, yes, there's some stories you can bring to my media house that they will probably not run because somebody would need to follow up and be 100% sure of what you're saying so that we don't have a case at the end of the day, say, no, it was independently done by Dr. Mike. And he showed us pictures. He gave us breakdown of statistics. If you do not do it on your own, it is not investigative journalism. It is you handing us your press statement of investigative journalism and expecting us to run with it. A lot of factors. But yes, the right thing is, depends on what you present. If, for example, you say, oh, I've investigated things in the Niger Delta, we see how pollution is affecting people in this community. We see how government officials have not spent on what they should, or they have pocketed the money or diverted this one. I mean, it would be unfair to share that kind of story. The media is responsible to following up on that story and be sure of the fact of it and publish it. But I acknowledge it, even from the start of our conversation, that we do have a challenge in Nigeria. We have a funding challenge, we have capacity challenge, we have training challenge that is making it almost impossible to deliver on quite a number of expectations. But in spite of the challenge, honestly, and it's not because I'm in the media, I think that the space and this industry is still giving so much more with the very little it has to work with. So yes, sir, Dr. Mike, they will turn the story down because they do not have the resources to follow up, or somebody has called and said, kill that story. It happens. Stories have been killed because people call. We know that it happens in Nigeria. And that is why sometimes when people use the space that they have, it becomes a threat, because like the social media space, the website, you cannot regulate it just yet, and information can't slip. So even with that one that you have done, you can now decide on your Facebook page, if you're sure of your facts, on your Twitter handle, put it out there. Get some influencers to help promote that story. The media house will be forced to either do a follow-up, or other media houses will take it up. Sometimes you need to push the hands of people. And that's why as citizens, we can't. I saw somewhere someone put out and said the citizen, office of the citizen is the fifth estate of the realm. I agree. We need to be a bit more active to say we must put this information out there. Haven't you seen quite a number of stories that they will start off, the conventional media will not want to go there because they've not put in the work. But then it starts to trend and you are forced to pick it up. You are forced to investigate it. A budget comes out by force for it. That's how it works. So they are constrained, but we'll get there eventually. Thank you so much, Dr. Mike. Any other comment? Any question?
Okay, I think, okay, Peace is asking, what does it take to be a whistleblower? Have you answered that one?
What does it take to be a whistleblower?
Yes, please.
A whistleblower is, you know,
She's
without
asking
the,
that do they do the same thing as investigative journalism?
whistleblowing is not investigative. It's just you are privy to certain things going on around you and you want to share. The media is not defined as a whistle. Where you can say that you blow the whistle on uncover certain things, but whistleblowers are usually people who work in organizations like Edward Snowden, for example, who blew the whistle on the American government based on what they're doing. Whistleblowers who perhaps work in a certain organization and see what is going on, and they decide to tell government authority, EFCC, ICPC, what is going on. A man who works at the gate of a house and he see people coming in, going out, Ghana must go up and down. One day is able to take a picture and see that things are happening and share it with the police or the authority. That is a whistleblower. So what does it take? It just takes you being active and being ready to share information with the relevant authority without any ulterior motive. Because if it's not altruistic, you're saying, oh, I want to share this to bring this person down, and there's no fact to it, you get into trouble. Even though we're working with a policy, we don't have a legislation just yet. So it's a bit haphazard what is expected of a whistleblower. This government came up with a policy and said they were going to give certain percentage when they were, the fight against economic crime, financial crime was intense, But we know how that one ended. The last Ikoyi Gate scandal that happened, to give the whistleblower money became a mental health issue. Oh, he will run mad if he gets the 5% he's entitled to. I mean, like, give him the money now. Did he not blow the whistle? But when we don't have a legislation backing it, policy will come, policy will go. But when, as an individual, you see something amiss, and it's not because there's an ulterior motive, then you're blowing the whistle on it. You're calling attention to it. You can be a whistleblower in a community based on the lack of certain infrastructures that you have. So it's not investigative journalism in that sense, to say you decide to investigate something to the very end. It could just be anybody who is a whistleblower. An investigative journalist is a trained person that is required to do that job. You need to be trained for it. Thank you so much. Peace.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think those are the questions for today. It's been such an insightful and enlightening time with you. Thank you so much for making our time to be with us this evening. All right, I'll just allow the students to say thank you before we call it an evening.
Do you have provision for mentorship? I'm a young journalist. Yeah, sure. I have taken quite a number of people under my wings and all of that. So nothing going on at the moment, but we're always glad to share and mentor.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. I was called to talk.
No, I just wanted you guys to tell her thank you before we end the class.
All right. Thank you very much. It was insightful.
Thank you very much, ma. Thank you. It was very insightful.
Thank you.
God bless you, ma'am. You did justice to me. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, on that note, we'll call it an evening. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank
you have something to say, ma'am?
No, I'm just one of us. In every space that you find yourself, let's be committed to Project Nigeria. Let's be committed in the sense that, hello? Let's be committed in the sense that we're bringing solutions to the table. We're finding solutions to the problem and not compounding it. And so it's even a charge to us to ensure that in our space, we do not in any way involve ourselves in corrupt practices or promote it. And that we help government also with information. That we're also not afraid, in spite of our region, our political leaning, or affiliation, to call out government if they are not getting it right, and to perhaps give government its credit if it's doing something right. And let's continue to at least have a vision for our country. I know Japa is trending. Any young person you run into now is thinking of what's the fastest way to Canada? Can I go from Abuja straight to Canada? But you can go anywhere you want to. Home is where the heart is. And I promise you, I have relatives, I have friends, I have former colleagues, I know people in the diaspora who are very concerned about Nigeria, and they want the country to work because this is home. So it's just a chat for us to just be committed to Project Nigeria and do our best to make our country work. Thank you very much. I appreciate you all, and it
Well
was really
said,
an honor
ma'am.
being in
Well
class.
said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, for the students, the Telegram group will be open soon, so you can start putting your assignments together to submit on the Telegram group. So yeah, I'll have to mute everyone so I don't get disturbed. Okay, awesome. So as I was saying, please start putting your assignments together. You submit them on the Telegram group shortly. Yeah, so have a good evening, everyone, and see you next week for another round of lectures. Chimeze, are you there? Please, you can end the class. You have the host function. Thank you.